There comes a moment in every soul's journey when the echoes of what once was begin to fade, and silence stretches wide enough to reveal the whisper of eternity. In that stillness, life is not asking us to rush ahead, nor to mourn what has fallen away, but to listen. For even the breaking, the waiting, the unanswered prayers are movements within a divine rhythm too vast for our understanding. What feels like loss may simply be the universe rearranging itself to meet the truth of who you're becoming. Every ending is a gentle hand guiding you toward a beginning you cannot yet see. So breathe, unclench your grip on yesterday, and allow the current of grace to carry you forward. You were never meant to remain where the light is already past. You are part of the eternal unfolding, each step, each tear, each letting go, a note in the timeless song of becoming. There are moments in life when everything seems to stop, when the noise quiets, the familiar dissolves, and we are left standing in the vast, unmoving silence of uncertainty. It feels uncomfortable, doesn't it? That pause between what was and what will be. We call it loss, delay, confusion, but perhaps it is something far more sacred. Perhaps it is life itself taking a deep breath, asking us to stop trying to fill every empty space with answers. Because in truth, silence is not absence, it is presence in its most unadorned form. We live in a world that rushes, a world obsessed with motion, always chasing the next thing, the next reason, the next proof that we're still alive. But there comes a time when life pulls you aside, not to punish you, but to prepare you. When prayers seem unanswered, when doors stay closed, when people drift away, it is not because life has turned its face from you, but because it is tuning you to a deeper frequency. There is a divine rhythm beneath the stillness, one that whispers only when the mind grows quiet enough to hear. You see, we often mistake stillness for stagnation, but in the grand design, stillness is where transformation begins. Think of the seed buried in the dark soil. To the outside eye, nothing seems to happen, no movement, no progress, yet within that quiet tomb, something miraculous unfolds. Roots begin to form, life begins to push against its shell, and one day, without fanfare, it breaks through the surface, reaching for the light it somehow always knew was there. That is what the sacred pause does for us. It grows us in ways the world cannot see. When life stills you, it's not a denial of your progress. It's an invitation to rediscover your alignment with the deeper current of being. For so long, we've been conditioned to equate stillness with failure, silence with emptiness, and waiting with weakness. But what if this space you're standing in, the unanswered question, the unfulfilled dream, is not a void but a womp? What if what feels like an ending is simply the slow forming of something more complete, more true? The truth is, we don't grow when everything is moving. We grow when something within us becomes aware of the pause. That moment when you stop demanding clarity and begin to rest in mystery, there lies the beginning of wisdom. Life doesn't rush to explain itself because it knows that meaning ripens in its own season. The pause isn't there to frustrate you. It's there to shape your perception, to cleanse the noise from your soul until you can hear the quiet hum of eternity beneath the surface of your daily breath. So many people run from silence because it exposes them to themselves. The stillness reminds us of the questions we've buried and the emotions we've denied. Yet that very discomfort is where healing begins. The pause doesn't punish, it purifies. It strips away what is not essential, leaving you with what is real, your awareness, your breath, your being. When you stop fighting the stillness, when you allow yourself to rest in it, you start to see that there is beauty even in the waiting. The silence is not empty. It is full of messages from the divine, if only you have the courage to listen. In that space between what was and what will be, you are being prepared. The silence is sculpting your soul, refining your vision, teaching you how to hear the subtle rhythm of your own becoming. Do not fear it. Lean into it, because the same intelligence that moves the stars in their orbits is the one that holds you still right now. Nothing is missing. Nothing is wasted. The pause is simply life holding you in its hands, whispering, "Be still. Something beautiful is taking form within you." And when the time comes, you will rise again, not as who you were, but as who you were always meant to be. We spend so much of our lives clutching the fragments of what once was. Old stories, familiar pain, the memory of people who no longer walk beside us. We hold them close as if letting go would erase the proof that we ever cared, that what we lived through had meaning. But here's the strange and gentle truth. The past doesn't need your grip to remain real. It already happened. It has already shaped you. Its purpose was never to become your identity. It was to awaken you to who you could be beyond it. When you hold on to what has already fulfilled its season, you begin to carry its weight into places it no longer belongs. You see, life moves in rhythms, not in straight lines. Every joy, every heartbreak, every ending is part of that rhythm. A note that sounds and then dissolves into silence so another can rise. But we, afraid of the unknown, try to replay the same note, hoping to recreate the harmony we once knew. And that's where suffering begins, in the resistance to movement, in trying to keep what was never meant to stay. There's a tenderness in realizing that even the things that hurt us were not mistakes. They were teachers. Each moment that broke you was, in some quiet way, showing you the shape of your own strength. The people who left carved space within you for deeper love. The dreams that died made room for ones that align more closely with your soul. Life does not take from you to diminish you. It takes to refine you, to lighten you for the journey ahead. Imagine walking through your days carrying every disappointment, every resentment, every what if. The load becomes unbearable, not because the past is heavy, but because it was never meant to be carried this far. Forgiveness, true forgiveness, is not about excusing what happened. It's about releasing yourself from the vibration of it. It's standing in the present moment and saying, I will not let yesterday dictate the frequency of my being today. That is freedom. The mind, of course, loves to revisit old wounds. It replays scenes like a film on loop, trying to make sense of what cannot be undone. But the soul knows better. The soul whispers, let it be. Because healing doesn't come through analysis. It comes through release. When you stop trying to rewrite what's already been written, you begin to discover the power of rewriting your relationship to it. You begin to see that memory can be a mirror, not a prison. You are not meant to forget what happened. You are meant to remember differently, to bless it for what it taught you, and then let it return to the flow of life from which it came. To forgive is not to say, it didn't matter. It is to say, it mattered, but it no longer controls the direction of my heart. That kind of release doesn't erase the past. It transforms it. It turns the weight of sorrow into wisdom. And perhaps this is what true healing looks like, not erasing your history, but integrating it, making peace with the fact that not every story gets closure, not every wound gets an apology, and not every ending makes sense from where you stand now. Yet still, you rise, you breathe, you continue to become, because life is not asking you to perfect the past. It's asking you to participate in the present. So when you find yourself haunted by what could have been, remember this: the moment you let go, you are not losing. It is the universe finally exhaling through you. You are releasing the density that once kept you from floating into your next becoming. You were never meant to drag yesterday into tomorrow. You were meant to bless it, release it, and walk light into the unknown, because only empty hands can receive what's next. There comes a time when life begins to dismantle everything you thought was certain. The plans you made start to dissolve. The paths you trusted disappear beneath your feet, and you find yourself wondering if anything is working in your favor at all. Yet what feels like chaos, what looks like things falling apart, may in truth be a sacred rearrangement, a divine choreography unfolding in dimensions you cannot yet perceive. For there is an order within the disorder, a wisdom weaving through the unraveling. And if you can hold still long enough to look deeper, you may begin to see that the pieces are not breaking, they are being moved. We've been taught to fear change, to equate comfort with safety and disruption with loss. But life is not static. It is a living intelligence, constantly reshaping itself through us. Every event, every encounter, every detour, none of it happens at random. The same consciousness that guides the tides and paints the stars is guiding your life too. When something falls away, it's not necessarily a punishment. It might be the universe rearranging the scenery so that your soul can see what it couldn't before. Think of how a storm clears the air. The wind howls, the rain pours, branches break, and yet when it passes, the sky is cleaner, the earth refreshed, the world made ready for growth once more. The storms of your life serve the same purpose. They strip away what's no longer aligned, clearing the way for truth to breathe again. But while we are in them, We cling to the wreckage, pleading for things to go back to how they were. We don't realize that the wreckage itself is what's keeping us from reaching the shore. There is a rhythm in these shifts, a divine timing that does not always align with our own. And in that space of not knowing, faith is not about pretending to understand, it's about learning to rest in the mystery. The rearrangement is not meant to make sense at first. It's meant to open your perception, to dissolve the illusions you've built around control, and to remind you that your life is part of something infinitely larger than your plans. You are like a note in a symphony too vast to hear in full. From where you stand, you can only catch fragments, the joy, the pain, the confusion, the hope. But to the great composer, every note is placed perfectly, every silence intentional, every dissonance necessary for harmony to emerge. What seems wrong from the perspective of the note is utterly perfect from the perspective of the song. And so it is with your life. What looks like falling apart may actually be falling into place in a way your mind can't yet translate. The losses, the delays, the unanswered prayers, they are not evidence of abandonment, but of alignment. The divine is not interested in your convenience. It is interested in your completion. And sometimes that means pulling apart the false structures we've mistaken for stability so that something truer, freer, and more expansive can take form. It takes courage to trust the rearrangement. To stop grasping for certainty and instead flow with the unknown requires a quiet kind of strength, the kind that comes not from control, but from surrender. You begin to realize that your role is not to direct the current, but to allow it to carry you where you're meant to go. Life knows the way. It always has. So when everything around you seems to crumble, when you cannot make sense of why certain things had to end, pause and remember this is not the undoing of your destiny. It is its unfolding. The pieces are not lost. They are simply being placed into a pattern you will one day recognize as perfection. And when that day comes, you'll look back at the chaos with a quiet smile, realizing it was never chaos at all. It was grace rearranging you into harmony with the song of your own becoming. There's a point on the journey when striving simply stops working. You've tried to fix yourself, tried to make sense of it all, tried to push forward through sheer will, and yet something within you whispers that it's time to let go, not as defeat, but as awakening. For all our reaching and wrestling, the most profound transformation doesn't come through effort, but through surrender. It's the quiet realization that life was never asking you to control it. It was inviting you to trust it. Surrender is one of the most misunderstood words in our language. We think it means giving up or losing or admitting weakness. But true surrender is none of these things. It's the moment when you stop forcing the river to flow where you want it to go and instead allow it to carry you where it's already headed. It's the shift from resistance to receptivity, from fear to flow. And strangely enough, the moment you stop fighting life, you discover that life has always been fighting for you. We've been conditioned to believe that strength lies in control. But what if control is the very thing keeping us from peace? What if the walls we've built to protect ourselves have also become the barriers that block grace from reaching us? The universe moves best through open hands. When you unclench your grip on outcomes, on explanations, on timing, you make space for something far more intelligent than your plans to unfold. There's a kind of sacred intelligence within the currents of existence, something that knows exactly what needs to be dismantled and what must remain. And the irony is, it's not until you stop struggling that this intelligence can begin to move freely within you. Healing doesn't come from trying to force yourself into wholeness. It comes from remembering that you already are. The cracks and fractures of your past don't disqualify you. They make you more porous to the light. Think of a seed again buried in darkness. It doesn't strain or strategize its way toward the sun. It simply yields to the rhythm written within it. The soil covers it completely, and in that stillness, in that surrender, it begins to transform. It splits open. It lets go of its former shape to become something entirely new. The seed never fears the breaking, because breaking is how it blooms. We, too, must allow ourselves to be broken open by life, not in bitterness, but in trust, because it is through the breaking that light finds its way in. When we surrender, we stop demanding that life bend to our will, and instead, we align with the greater will that has been guiding us all along. The peace you've been searching for doesn't come from finally getting everything right. It comes from realizing there was never anything wrong with where you are. Surrender doesn't mean you no longer care. It means you care enough to let things unfold naturally without forcing them into premature form. It's a gentle confidence that whatever needs to stay will stay, and whatever needs to leave will leave, because life itself is trustworthy. When you live from that place, fear loses its hold. You begin to move with the rhythm of existence instead of against it. And in that flow, you begin to notice a strange and quiet power arising from within you, a strength that doesn't shout, doesn't demand, doesn't grasp. It's the strength of alignment, the power of peace. You find that life, when trusted, becomes astonishingly kind. Things begin to align, not because you force them to, but because you finally stop standing in their way. So breathe, loosen your grip. Stop fighting the current that's carrying you home. For the moment you surrender, life rushes in to meet you, and you realize, perhaps for the first time, that you were never drowning, only resisting the tide that was trying to lift you. There comes a moment in every healing journey when you begin to see yourself differently, not as the person who was hurt, but as the one who has begun to awaken. The wound that once defined you starts to lose its power, and in its place arises something gentler, clearer, infinitely wiser. This is the renewal of vision, the shift from seeing life through the eyes of pain to perceiving it through the lens of purpose. It doesn't happen all at once. It begins quietly, like dawn spreading across the edges of a long night. For so long, pain can feel like a fog that surrounds everything. You wake with it. You walk with it, you even breathe through it. But pain, as unbearable as it may be, is not meant to imprison you. It's meant to reveal you. It exposes the places where you've forgotten your worth, where you've mistaken your temporary suffering for permanent truth. And when you start to look closely, you realize that the wound isn't your identity, it's your initiation. It's the point where you were invited to meet yourself in a deeper, more sacred way. We often think of healing as going back to who we were before the pain, but life never moves backward. It only transforms. Healing isn't about restoration. It's about revelation. It's seeing that even the shattered parts of you were never meaningless. Each fracture was a doorway, each scar a signature of survival, each tear a thread in the tapestry that's still being woven. When you start to see your story through that light, you stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and begin to whisper, "What is it awakening within me?" There's a subtle beauty in realizing that nothing was wasted. The heartbreak, the confusion, the times you felt lost, they were all part of your unfolding. The universe does not discard experience, it recycles it into wisdom. Every time you thought you were breaking, you were actually being reshaped. The pain was chiseling away everything false, revealing the essence that had been hidden beneath the noise of fear and expectation. And once you start to see that, you no longer resent the process. You begin to trust it. When you look at yourself now, you may notice the evidence of your journey, the scars, visible or unseen. But scars are not signs of damage. They are the proof that healing has already taken place. They are the marks left behind when the light entered and stayed. And perhaps the most profound shift of all happens when you stop trying to erase them and begin to see them as constellations, a map of where you've been and how far you've come. You see, healing is not a return, it's an emergence. It's what happens when your soul remembers that it was never broken to begin with. Beneath the layers of pain, beneath the stories you've told yourself about who you are and what you've lost, there is a still, luminous presence untouched by it all. That's who you really are. The wound was simply the invitation to rediscover it. And when that recognition dawns, when you can look at your past and no longer flinch, you begin to live differently. You stop seeing life as something that happens to you and start experiencing it as something that moves through you. The sharp edges soften. Gratitude begins to bloom in places where bitterness once lived. You begin to notice beauty even in imperfection, harmony even in uncertainty, purpose even in pain. That is the miracle of renewed vision, the ability to look at the same world, the same memories, the same heart, and see them illuminated by the light of understanding. The past no longer binds you because you've seen through it. You've recognized that the story was never about what you lost, but about who you became in the losing. And in that seeing, you find freedom, the quiet, effortless kind that doesn't need to prove itself. So when you catch your reflection in the mirror of this moment, don't look for who you were. Look for who is emerging, because you are not the wound nor the pain that once defined you. You are the light that has learned to shine through it. There comes a time when you begin to feel that life itself is not a series of separate events, but a single unfolding movement, a vast and silent dance in which everything is connected, everything participates. The joys, the heartbreaks, the beginnings and endings, even the moments that seem insignificant, all of it is part of one great rhythm, one continuous pulse of existence that breathes through you as much as it breathes through the stars. To move on truly and freely is to remember that you were never standing still to begin with. You have always been part of this motion. For so long, we've been taught to see life as something we must control, as if we were standing outside of it, trying to direct the dance. But the deeper truth is that we are not the choreographers, we are the movement itself. Every rise, every fall, every pause has meaning because it belongs to the totality of the dance. Even when you feel lost, uncertain, or broken, you are still moving in harmony with a rhythm far greater than your understanding. The pain is not separate from the beauty. It is one of the steps through which the beauty finds expression. When you begin to live with this awareness, something within you softens. You stop resisting what is and begin to flow with what's unfolding. You realize that the same intelligence that turns winter into spring, that pulls the tide back and forth, that causes the stars to burn and fade, is also the force guiding your journey. There is no division between your story and the story of the cosmos. They are one continuous breath. And in that recognition, fear begins to dissolve. You no longer feel like a stranger to your own life. You begin to sense the unity in the chaos, the sacred order behind the apparent disorder. The art of moving on, then, is not about abandoning what has been. It's about returning to movement itself. It's remembering that you were never meant to cling to any single moment, no matter how beautiful or painful, because each moment is simply passing through, just as you are passing through it. You and life are in a constant exchange. It gives. You receive, you release, it renews. It is a conversation too ancient for words, and yet every heartbeat, every breath is a response within it. To live in this flow is to live awake. It's to meet each experience with reverence, knowing it's both fleeting and eternal, fleeting in form, eternal in essence. You no longer ask life to give you permanence. You learn instead to find peace in impermanence. Like a dancer who trusts the music, you surrender to the rhythm and let it guide your steps. And what once felt like uncertainty begins to feel like wonder. When you see yourself as part of this eternal dance, forgiveness becomes easier, letting go becomes natural, and gratitude becomes instinctive. You stop dividing your life into good and bad, gain and loss, because you begin to see that everything serves the unfolding. Even the detours, the delays, the heartbreaks, all of it belongs. You are not moving away from life. When you let go, you are moving deeper into it. And there's a beauty in realizing that nothing truly leaves you. What you release doesn't vanish, it transforms. Energy never disappears, it only changes form. The love you've given, the lessons you've learned, the moments you've lived, they continue to ripple through the fabric of existence long after you've moved on. You are both the ripple and the ocean, the step and the rhythm, the dancer and the dance. So when the time comes to release, to walk forward, to embrace the unknown, do it not with fear, but with awe. Trust that you are being carried even when you cannot see where. For in the end, there is no final letting go, only the continual movement of returning to life again and again in ever deepening awareness. You were never separate from the flow. You were the flow all along.